My name is Katie, and I am 54 years old. For 28 years, I believed I knew what true love really meant. I spent weeks planning our anniversary dinner, choosing the red dress my husband once said made me look radiant. That night, I waited alone at a candlelit table. He never came, but when he returned, every lock had been changed. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from. Hit like and subscribe. Have you ever had to protect your heart by locking someone out? I met Derek when we were both just kids pretending to be adults. I was 23 working in the kitchen of a small Italian restaurant in South Philadelphia. He was 25, a waiter with a crooked smile and dreams bigger than his paycheck. We were both broke. We were both hungry for something more. And somehow, in between the chaos of dinner rushes and late-night cleanup shifts, we found each other. I still remember the first time he asked me to have coffee with him after work. We sat in a 24-hour diner drinking cheap coffee until 3 in the morning, talking about everything and nothing. He told me he wanted to build something. He did not know what exactly, but he knew he was not meant to stay a waiter forever. I told him I wanted to open my own bakery someday. He looked at me like I had just told him I wanted to touch the moon, and then he said, "Why not? Why not reach for the moon?" That was Derek back then, the man who believed in impossible things. We got married a year later in a small church ceremony. I wore a dress I found at a thrift store for $40. Derek wore a borrowed suit that was a little too big in the shoulders. We had no money for a honeymoon, so we spent our wedding night in our tiny one-bedroom apartment, eating leftover wedding cake and dancing to the radio in our cramped living room. Those first years were hard, harder than I ever imagined. We scraped by on 2 incomes that barely covered rent and groceries. There were nights when we ate ramen noodles for dinner because that was all we could afford. There were times when I wondered if we had made a mistake, if love was really enough to survive on. But Derek kept pushing. He studied for his real estate license at night while working double shifts during the day. I picked up extra hours at the restaurant and started baking on weekends, selling cookies and pies to neighbors and coworkers. We were exhausted, we were stressed, but we were together. When Derek finally got his license and closed his first deal, we celebrated with a bottle of wine that cost more than $10 for the first time in our marriage. It felt like victory. It felt like the beginning of something. Over the next decade, things slowly changed. Derek climbed the ladder in commercial real estate. I saved every penny I could and eventually opened my own bakery in a tiny storefront that used to be a laundromat. We bought our first house when I was 35. Nothing fancy, just a small 3-bedroom with a backyard big enough for our 2 kids to play in. Marcus came first, then Angela 3 years later. Watching Derek become a father was like watching him fall in love all over again. He coached Marcus in Little League. He let Angela paint his toenails pink when she was 4 years old. He was present. He was loving. He was everything I had hoped he would be. By the time we reached our 20th anniversary, we had built something remarkable. Derek had started his own commercial real estate company. My bakery had grown from a one-woman operation to a thriving business with 8 employees. We bought the house I had always dreamed of, a beautiful 4-bedroom home in the suburbs with a wraparound porch. We purchased a rental apartment downtown and a cozy cabin in the Poconos for weekend getaways. Everything we owned was in both our names. I had insisted on that from the very beginning. My mother had taught me that lesson before she passed. "Never let anyone have complete control over your future," she said. "Always make sure you have a key to your own door." I did not know how literal that advice would become. 2 years ago, Derek hired a new executive assistant. Her name was Tiffany. She was 31 years old, blonde, ambitious, and exactly the type of woman who made me feel suddenly conscious of every gray hair on my head. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Derek had hired plenty of attractive women over the years. He had never given me a reason to doubt him. But something about the way he said her name stuck in my mind. Tiffany handled that. Tiffany scheduled the meeting. Tiffany thinks we should try a new approach. Her name started appearing in every conversation like a song I could not get out of my head. I pushed those thoughts away. After 28 years, I trusted my husband. I believed in the life we had built together. I had no idea that the foundation was already cracking beneath my feet. The changes started small, so small that I almost missed them entirely. Derek began waking up earlier than usual. For 25 years, I had to practically drag him out of bed every morning. Suddenly, he was up at 5:30, showering and dressing before I even opened my eyes. He said he wanted to get to the office before the phone started ringing. He said the early morning was his most productive time. I believed him. Then came the gym membership. Derek had never been one for exercise. He used to joke that his only workout was walking from his car to the front door. But at 54, he announced he wanted to get in shape. He joined an expensive fitness center and started going 4 times a week. I told myself it was a midlife health kick. I was happy he was taking care of himself. The new clothes came next. Designer suits, Italian leather shoes, cologne that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. When I complimented him on his new style, he shrugged and said he needed to look professional for high-end clients. That made sense. His company was growing. He was meeting with bigger investors, wealthier developers. Of course he needed to look the part. But then there were the late nights, the business dinners that stretched past midnight, the weekend meetings that could not wait until Monday, the phone that was always face down on the table, always locked with a new password he never shared. I noticed that Derek stopped kissing me goodbye in the morning. He stopped asking about my day when he came home. Our conversations became transactional. Did you pay the water bill? What time is Marcus coming for dinner? The easy intimacy we had shared for decades slowly evaporated, and I could not figure out where it had gone. About 6 months before our anniversary, I decided to surprise Derek at his office. I had baked a fresh batch of his favorite lemon bars, and I thought I would brighten his afternoon. When I walked into the reception area, Tiffany was sitting at her desk, looking like she had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. She smiled at me, but the smile did not reach her eyes. "Hello, Mrs. Parker," she said. "Derek is in a meeting right now. Can I help you with something?" I handed her the container of lemon bars and asked her to give them to him. As I turned to leave, I noticed something on her wrist, a silver bracelet with a small heart charm. It looked exactly like the bracelet Derek had bought 2 months earlier. He told me it was a birthday gift for his mother. His mother had been dead for 15 years. I felt a cold knot form in my stomach, but I pushed it down. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he bought 2 bracelets. Maybe I was going crazy. On my way out, I glanced into Derek's office through the glass wall. The framed photo of our family that used to sit on his desk had been moved to a bookshelf in the corner, barely visible. In its place was a small succulent plant in a ceramic pot painted with flowers. I did not ask him about it when he came home that night. I was afraid of the answer. 2 months before our anniversary, my neighbor Helen stopped by my bakery to order a birthday cake for her granddaughter. We chatted for a while about the usual things, weather and recipes and neighborhood gossip. Then she paused, and her expression shifted to something uncomfortable. She said, "I do not want to cause any trouble, but I saw something last week that has been bothering me." I felt my chest tighten. "What did you see?" She told me she had been downtown for a doctor's appointment and had parked in the garage near the Marriott Hotel. When she was walking back to her car, she saw Derek's silver Mercedes in the lot. She recognized it by the vanity plate I had given him for his 50th birthday. D Park 50. It was the middle of the afternoon, she said. Maybe it was a business thing, but I thought you should know. I thanked her and told her it was probably nothing. Derek met with clients at hotels all the time, conference rooms, business lunches, perfectly innocent explanations. But that night I asked him about his day. I asked if he had any meetings downtown. He said no. He said he had been at the office all afternoon. I did not sleep well after that. The questions kept circling in my mind like vultures waiting for something to die. Every time I tried to push them away, they came back stronger. I started paying attention to things I had ignored before. The way he angled his phone screen away from me. The way he deleted his text messages every night. The way he said Tiffany's name with a softness in his voice that used to be reserved for me. I wanted to confront him. I wanted to demand the truth. But part of me was terrified of what that truth might be. After 28 years, I was not sure I was ready to watch my entire life collapse. So I waited. I watched. And I planned our anniversary dinner, hoping against hope that I was wrong about everything. The morning of our 28th anniversary, I woke up before dawn. I could not sleep. I had been planning this day for weeks, trying to make it perfect. I thought maybe if I could remind Derek of who we used to be, we could find our way back to each other. I baked fresh croissants, the same recipe I had made for him on our first anniversary when we could barely afford butter. I set the kitchen table with our good dishes and put fresh flowers in a vase. I even wore the yellow sundress he had bought me years ago, the one he said made me look like sunshine. When Derek came downstairs, he seemed distracted. He glanced at the table, at the croissants, at me in my yellow dress, and he barely smiled. "This looks nice," he said, checking his phone. "Happy anniversary," I replied. 28 years. He nodded, still looking at his screen. "Happy anniversary. Listen, I have a really important meeting today that I cannot reschedule, but I will be home by 7 for dinner. You made reservations, right?" I told him. Yes, I had made reservations at Lucia's, the same restaurant where we first met. It had changed owners 3 times since then, but the building was the same. I thought it would be romantic. "Great," he said. He kissed my cheek quickly, grabbed a croissant without sitting down, and headed for the door. "See you tonight." I sat alone at the kitchen table for a long time after he left, looking at the untouched place setting across from me. I spent the afternoon at the bakery trying to keep busy. Gina, my assistant manager and closest friend, could tell something was wrong. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired. I did not want to say the words out loud because saying them would make them real. At 4 o'clock, I went home to get ready. I took a long shower. I did my hair and makeup carefully, taking more time than I had in years. I put on the red dress, the one Derek had bought me for our 25th anniversary. He said it made me look radiant. He said I was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. I wondered if he still thought that. By 6:30, I was ready. I sat in the living room watching the clock on the mantel. 6:45, 6:50, 7 o'clock. No Derek. I called his cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I texted him. "Are you on your way?" No response. 7:15. The restaurant called to confirm our reservation. I told them we were running a little late. They said they could hold the table for 30 minutes. 7:30. Still nothing. I called his office. The answering machine picked up. Everyone had gone home hours ago. At 7:45, I received a text message. My heart jumped when I saw Derek's name on the screen. "Sorry, babe. Meeting ran late. Client wants to take me to dinner to close the deal. Cannot get out of it. Rain check on Lucia's." I stared at that message for a full minute. 28 years of marriage. 28 years of building a life together. And he was blowing off our anniversary dinner for a client. I typed back, asking what client, what deal, how late he would be. He responded 20 minutes later. "Big investor from New York. Could be a game changer for the company. Do not wait up." I called the restaurant and canceled our reservation. The hostess sounded sympathetic, like she knew exactly what kind of night I was having. I sat in the living room in my red dress, surrounded by silence. The candles I had lit flickered on the dining table. The champagne I had chilled sat unopened in the ice bucket. The card I had written, filled with 28 years' worth of love and gratitude, sat propped against his plate. At 9 o'clock, I made a decision. I did not make it out of suspicion or jealousy. I made it because I needed to know. I needed to stop wondering and start knowing, even if the truth destroyed me. I drove downtown to the Marriott. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. My heart was not. Every mile felt like a step closer to something I could not take back. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I would find nothing. I told myself Derek was probably sitting in some conference room right now, bored out of his mind, wishing he was home with me. I pulled into the parking garage and circled the levels slowly. On the third floor, I found it. Derek's silver Mercedes, vanity plate D Park 50, parked in a spot near the elevator. I sat in my car for 20 minutes staring at his vehicle. I could turn around right now. I could go home and pretend I never saw this. I could keep living in comfortable ignorance. But I was done pretending. I walked into the hotel lobby and approached the front desk. I told the clerk I was Derek Parker's wife, that there was a family emergency and I needed to find him immediately. I must have looked convincing because she checked her computer and told me he was in room 412. The elevator ride felt like it lasted an hour. When the doors opened on the fourth floor, I walked down the hallway like I was walking through water. Everything felt slow. Everything felt heavy. I found room 412. I stood outside the door. I could hear voices inside. Derek's voice. And another voice. Younger, female, laughing. I heard him say something and then I heard her respond. I could not make out the words through the door, but I did not need to. Then I heard it clearly. His voice warm and tender in a way I had not heard in years. I love you, Tiffany. Tonight is special. Our own little anniversary. I did not knock. I did not burst in and cause a scene. I simply stood there letting those words sink into my bones. 28 years. And he was celebrating an anniversary with someone else. I turned and walked back to the elevator. I walked through the lobby. I got in my car. And I drove home. I did not cry. I did not scream. I felt nothing except a strange, cold clarity, like a fog had lifted and I could finally see the path in front of me. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and looked around at the life we had built, the house we had saved for, the photos on the walls, the evidence of 28 years everywhere I looked, and then I started making phone calls. By midnight, I had a plan. I called my sister Doris first. She lived in New Jersey and had been through her own divorce 15 years ago. Her ex-husband had cheated on her with his dental hygienist, and she had learned some hard lessons about what happens when you wait too long to act. "Oh, honey," she said when I told her what happened. "I am so sorry, but listen to me carefully. You need to move fast. Men like Derek, when they get caught, they start hiding things. Money, assets, everything. You need to protect yourself before he knows you know." She was right. I had seen what happened to Doris. She trusted her husband to be fair, and he emptied their savings account before she even found a lawyer. I was not going to make that mistake. At 2 a.m, I started gathering documents. I found our property deeds in the filing cabinet. All 3 properties, our home, the downtown apartment, and the cabin in the Poconos, were in both our names. I had insisted on that years ago, and now I understood why some part of me had always known to be cautious. I pulled out bank statements, investment records, tax returns from the past 5 years. I took photos of everything and emailed them to myself and to Doris. If Derek tried to claim I was lying or manipulating, I would have proof. At 3:30, I made the most important decision of the night. I was not going to wait for Derek to come home and lie to my face. I was not going to give him the chance to explain or manipulate or charm his way out of this. I was going to change the locks. It sounds simple when you say it like that. Change the locks. 3 words. But those 3 words meant I was taking control of my own life for the first time in years. I was not going to be a victim. I was going to be a force. At 5 a.m, I called Mr. Patterson. He was a locksmith who had helped us several times over the years, most recently when Marcus lost his house key as a teenager. I apologized for the early hour and told him I had an emergency. "Parker," he said, his voice groggy but concerned. "What is going on? I need all the locks on my house changed today," I said. "Every single one. As soon as possible." He paused. "Is everything okay? Is this a safety issue?" I told him yes, it was a safety issue. And that was the truth. My emotional safety, my financial safety, my future, all of it was at risk. He agreed to come at 8 o'clock with his crew. At 6, I called the property management company that handled our downtown apartment. I spoke with the building manager and told him I needed the locks changed immediately and that no one was to be given access without my explicit written permission. He asked if Mr. Parker was aware. I told him Mr. Parker did not need to be aware. My name was on the deed. That was enough. At 6:30, I called the security company that monitored our Poconos cabin. The cabin used electronic keypad locks. I had the code changed remotely and removed Derek's phone from the authorized access list. At 7, I called Frank, a lawyer Doris had recommended. He specialized in family law and property disputes. His office did not open until 9, but I left a detailed voicemail explaining my situation and asking for an emergency consultation. By the time the sun came up, I had set everything in motion. I felt exhausted. I felt heartbroken. But more than anything, I felt awake, like I had been sleepwalking through my marriage for years and had finally opened my eyes. Mr. Patterson arrived at 8 sharp with 2 assistants. They worked quickly and efficiently, removing every lock on every door and replacing them with new ones. The front door, the back door, the garage entry, even the basement door that led to the yard. While they worked, I sat in the kitchen drinking coffee and watching. Gina called to check on me. I told her I would not be coming in today and asked her to manage the bakery. She asked if I was sick. I told her no, I was finally getting better. At 10:15, the last lock was installed. Mr. Patterson handed me a single set of keys. I asked for only one set. I did not need any extras. "Are you sure you are okay, Mrs. Parker?" he asked. He looked worried. "You know you can tell me if something is wrong." I smiled at him. "Something was very wrong," I said, "but I am fixing it." I called the bank at 11. I spoke with the manager, a woman named Sandra, who had handled our accounts for years. I told her I needed to temporarily freeze all joint accounts pending a legal review. She hesitated, explaining that both account holders typically needed to agree. I told her I had reason to believe unauthorized transactions might occur and that I wanted to protect the funds until I could speak with my attorney. She put me on hold for 15 minutes. When she came back, she said she could place a temporary hold pending documentation from my lawyer. I would need to provide that within 72 hours. I told her that was fine. By noon, I had secured everything I could secure: our properties, our accounts, our assets. Derek could not sell anything, withdraw anything, or access anything without my knowledge and consent. I sat down on the living room sofa and finally let myself feel the weight of what I had done. In the span of one night and one morning, I had dismantled the framework of my marriage. There was no going back now. Even if I wanted to, even if Derek begged and pleaded and promised to change, I had already made my move. I did not regret it, not for 1 second. At 2:17 in the afternoon, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I looked through the front window and saw Derek's Mercedes. He got out, still wearing the suit from yesterday, and walked toward the front door with the casual confidence of a man who had no idea his world was about to collapse. I watched him put his key in the lock. I watched him try to turn it. I watched his confusion when it did not work. He tried again, then again. Then he started knocking. "Katie, Katie." The door is stuck. Something is wrong with the lock. I did not answer. I stood behind the door, silent and still. He knocked harder. "Katie, are you in there? Let me in." I let him knock for 5 full minutes. I let him call my name. I let him grow frustrated and confused and increasingly panicked. And then finally, I opened the door. But I did not step aside. I stood in the doorway, blocking his path, and I looked at the man I had loved for 28 years. He stared at me, his face a mixture of relief and irritation. What is going on? Why would the key not work? "I have been out here knocking forever." I spoke slowly, clearly, without raising my voice. "I know where you were last night," I said. "I know who you were with. I went to the Marriott. I stood outside room 412. I heard everything." His face went pale. For a moment, he looked like he might faint. Then he tried to recover, tried to put on his salesman smile. Katie, wait. Let me explain. It is not what you think. Tiffany and I were just celebrating. I mean, we closed a big deal and… Stop, I said. Just stop. Do not insult me with lies. Not after everything. He stood there on the porch of our home, and for the first time in our marriage, he looked small. He looked like a stranger. Every lock on this house has been changed, I told him. The downtown apartment too. The cabin. The bank accounts are frozen. I have a meeting with a divorce lawyer tomorrow morning. You will be hearing from him soon. Derek's expression shifted from guilt to anger. You cannot do this, he said. This is my house too. You cannot just lock me out. Actually, I can. I already did. And if you try to force your way in, I will call the police. I have already documented everything. He sputtered, searching for words. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. That is not my problem anymore. Maybe Tiffany has room for you. I closed the door in his face. I turned the new lock, and I walked away. Derek did not leave quietly. He stayed on the porch for another hour, alternating between knocking, calling my phone, and threatening to break a window. I ignored all of it. I had already warned him I would call the police, and when he started pounding on the door hard enough to shake the frame, I made good on that promise. The officers arrived within 15 minutes. I met them at the door and calmly explained the situation. I showed them my identification and the property deed with both our names. I told them I had changed the locks following the discovery that my husband was having an affair and that he was causing a disturbance. Derek tried to argue that it was his house too, that he had every right to enter. The officers explained that while ownership disputes were a civil matter, his current behavior constituted disorderly conduct. They advised him to leave and contact a lawyer. He glared at me from the driveway as he got into his car. This is not over, Katie. I know, I replied. But this part is. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings, and paperwork. I met with Frank, the lawyer, who reviewed my situation and confirmed that I had acted within my legal rights. In Pennsylvania, both spouses have equal claim to jointly owned property, but neither can be forced to grant the other access without a court order. Derek would need to go through the legal system to regain entry, and that would take time. Frank was impressed with how quickly I had moved. Most women in your position hesitate, he said. They want to believe it is not happening. They give their husbands time to hide assets or manipulate the situation. You did not do that. I learned from my sister's mistakes, I told him. We filed for divorce on grounds of adultery. Frank warned me that Derek's lawyers would likely fight hard, but we had evidence. The hotel records. Helen's testimony about seeing his car. And soon we would have more. Because 2 days after I changed the locks, Tiffany started texting me. The first message came from an unknown number. I knew it was her immediately. You think you won? You did not win anything. Derek loves me. We are going to be together. You are just a bitter old woman who could not keep her husband happy. I did not respond. Instead, I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Frank. More messages followed. She called me names. She bragged about their relationship. She said Derek had told her I was cold and distant, that I cared more about my bakery than my marriage. Each message was another piece of evidence. Then came the message that changed everything. I am pregnant, she wrote. 2 months. Derek and I are going to have a baby. How does it feel knowing your husband wanted to start a new family without you? I stared at that message for a long time. I thought about the children Derek and I had raised together, Marcus and Angela. The years of soccer games and school plays and family dinners, and now he was going to have another child with a woman young enough to be his daughter. I did not feel angry. I felt sad, not for myself, but for that unborn child who would grow up in the shadow of a broken marriage and a father who did not know how to be faithful. I forwarded the message to Frank. He said it would be useful in negotiations. 2 weeks after the initial confrontation, Derek reached out through his lawyer, requesting a meeting. He wanted to negotiate a settlement and avoid a lengthy court battle. Frank advised me to consider it. We met at a neutral location, a conference room in Frank's office building. Derek looked terrible. He had lost weight. His designer suit was wrinkled. The confident, charming man I had married had been replaced by someone hollow and desperate. His lawyer laid out their proposal. Derek would keep the downtown apartment since it was near his office. He wanted the cabin for weekend use. He was willing to let me keep the primary residence. The investment accounts would be split 50-50. I looked at Frank. He nodded slightly, indicating it was a reasonable starting point. I have a counter-proposal, I said. Derek leaned forward, a flicker of hope in his eyes. The downtown apartment was purchased primarily with money from my bakery, I said. I have the records to prove it. So no, you do not get to keep it just because it is convenient for your commute to your new girlfriend. His jaw tightened. Katie, I was not finished. You can have the cabin. I never liked it there anyway. Too many mosquitoes. The house stays with me. The apartment gets sold, and we split the proceeds. Investment accounts split 50-50, that is fine. And you cover my legal fees. His lawyer started to object, but Derek held up his hand. And if I agree to this, then we sign the papers and move on with our lives, I said. No dragging this through court. No public spectacle. No airing our dirty laundry for everyone to see. He thought about it for a long moment. I could see him calculating, weighing his options. A court battle would be expensive and embarrassing. His business reputation would suffer. His clients would find out about the affair. Fine, he said quietly. Fine. I agree. We signed the preliminary papers that day. The divorce would be finalized in 3 months. When I walked out of that conference room, I felt something I had not felt in years. Free. The divorce was finalized in early spring. I stood in the courtroom as the judge pronounced our marriage officially dissolved. 28 years reduced to a stack of paperwork and a signature. Derek did not look at me. He signed his name and left without a word. I thought I would feel devastated. I thought I would cry. But standing there in that courtroom, all I felt was relief. The next few months were challenging in ways I had not anticipated. I had been half of a couple for nearly 3 decades. Learning to be whole on my own took time. I threw myself into the bakery. I had always loved my work, but now it became my sanctuary. I arrived early every morning before the sun was up, and I baked croissants and sourdough and cinnamon rolls. Each batch was a meditation. Each perfectly risen loaf was proof that I could create something beautiful from simple ingredients. Gina became more than an employee. She became my partner. We expanded the menu, added a small seating area, started offering catering services for local events. The bakery grew, and so did I. I joined a divorce support group at my church. I was hesitant at first. I did not want to sit in a circle and talk about my feelings, but Doris convinced me to try it once, and I kept going back. There were other women there who understood what I was going through. Some had been cheated on. Some had been abandoned. All of us were learning how to rebuild. One woman named Patricia became a close friend. She was 62, divorced after 35 years of marriage. Her husband had left her for someone he met online. She told me something one evening that stayed with me. We spend so much time being wives and mothers. She said that we forget we were people first. The hardest part of divorce is not losing your husband. It is finding yourself again. She was right. I had lost myself somewhere in those 28 years. I had become Derek's wife, Marcus, and Angela's mother, the bakery owner, the hostess, the caretaker. I had forgotten that before all of that, I was Katie. Just Katie. A woman with dreams and desires and a life of her own. I started doing things I had always wanted to do, but never made time for. I took piano lessons, something I had dreamed about since I was a little girl. I was terrible at first. My fingers were stiff and uncooperative, but slowly, week by week, I improved. The first time I played a complete song without mistakes, I actually cried. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage. I went on trips with my sister. We spent a week in Charleston eating too much shrimp and walking on the beach at sunset. We talked about everything, about our parents, about our marriages, about what we wanted from whatever years we had left. I want to be happy, I told her one night. Not the kind of happy that depends on someone else, the kind that comes from inside. She squeezed my hand. You are already getting there, she said. I can see it in your eyes. My children supported me through all of it. Marcus flew home twice during those first months. He sat with me in the kitchen drinking coffee and listening while I talked. He did not try to fix anything or offer advice. He just listened. That was exactly what I needed. Angela called every few days. She was furious at her father refused to speak to him for months. I told her she did not have to take sides, that Derek was still her father despite everything. She said she knew, but she needed time. I watched both of my children navigate their own feelings about the divorce, and I tried not to burden them with mine. They were adults now with their own lives and struggles. It was not their job to carry my pain. I did not know what happened to Derek and Tiffany after the divorce. I did not ask, and I did not want to know. Someone told me that Tiffany had a miscarriage a few weeks after the divorce was finalized. I felt a moment of sadness for that lost possibility, but I did not reach out. That chapter of my life was closed. Eventually, Derek remarried. I heard it through the grapevine. Not to Tiffany, but to someone else. A woman he met through work. I hoped for her sake that he had changed. I suspected he had not. It no longer mattered to me. 1 year after my divorce, I stood in my bakery at 5 a.m, shaping dough for the day's bread. The shop was quiet. The mixers were off. The only sound was the soft rhythm of my hands against the floured counter. This had become my favorite time of day. The world was still sleeping, and I had this space all to myself. I thought about the person I had been a year ago. The woman in the red dress waiting for a husband who would never come home. The woman who drove to a hotel in the middle of the night hoping to prove herself wrong. The woman who stood outside a door and heard her marriage end. That woman felt like a stranger now. I was not the same person anymore. I was stronger. I was clearer. I had learned things about myself that 28 years of marriage had never taught me. I learned that I could survive things I never thought I could survive. I learned that starting over at 54 was not just possible, it was liberating. I learned that the key to my own happiness had been in my pocket all along. I just had to use it. The bakery door chimed, and I looked up. It was too early for customers. We did not open until 7. A man stood in the doorway. He was somewhere in his late 50s with gray hair and kind eyes. He looked embarrassed. I am so sorry, he said. I saw the light on and thought you might be open. I know it is early, but I smelled the bread from the street, and I smiled. Come in. I just pulled some croissants out of the oven. His name was Robert. He was a retired teacher widowed 3 years ago. He had moved to the neighborhood recently to be closer to his grandchildren. He came in that morning for coffee and pastry, and he stayed for an hour talking with me about books and music and the small joys of early mornings. Before he left, he asked if he could come back tomorrow. I told him the doors would be open. I did not know then that Robert would become someone important to me. I did not know that we would spend countless mornings together sharing coffee and conversation, building something new from the ground up. I did not know that I would learn to trust again slowly and carefully with a man who had learned his own lessons about loss and love. But that morning, I did not need to know any of that. I just needed to know that I was okay, that I was more than okay, that I had walked through fire and come out the other side. I pulled the new key from my pocket and looked at it. Such a small thing, a piece of metal that had changed everything. Changing those locks had not just kept Derek out. It had let me in, into my own life, into my own future, into a version of myself I did not know existed. I put the key back in my pocket and returned to my bread. The sun was coming up outside. Another day was beginning, and for the first time in a long time, I could not wait to see what it would bring. If you are watching this and you are trapped in a relationship where you are the only one fighting, let me tell you something. You have the right to change the locks, not just on your doors, but on your heart. You deserve to be with someone who wants to come home to you. You deserve to be more than an afterthought. Do not wait for permission. Do not wait for the perfect moment. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is turn the key and walk through a new door. Have you ever had to make a decision that changed everything? Tell me about it in the comments below. I would love to hear your story. And if this video touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening. I am sending love and strength to each and every one of you. May you always have the courage to hold your own keys.